Welcome into this week's edition of the Cool Grandpa Podcast. I'm your host, Greg Payne, and I wanted to kick off this presentation with letting the folks know that are watching this on YouTube that we had some video troubles between Patrick and myself. And so what we're going to do is film the introduction and then it'll go to the logo on YouTube, but it'll be much more of a listen to versus watch us conversation over there on that channel. For the podcast people, everything's the same. You're still hearing me coming through your lovely little earbuds or your car stereo speakers. So this will be a great conversation we are about to have with Patrick Brady. Now, Patrick Brady is the founder of Heritage HQ, and it's not just another genealogy and family tree type application. It's actually a way that you can go and set up a family website, and you can then load in pictures, and you can load in interviews with grandparents and uncles. You can tell family stories, and it can be all centrally located. So this is going to be a really cool discussion with Patrick. The other part of this conversation you're really going to enjoy is listening to about his experience being in China, being a professor there, and how he was able to really experience that culture and how they view grandparents and family histories and everything that went on during the Cultural Revolution, that he was able to learn about how families were able to preserve their heritage and their family stories, even during that period of upheaval. One thing I do want to tell you before we get started is I do now have some products up on the website other than the book that I keep talking about. And so go over to cool-grandpa.us, look for the bookstore in the menu, click on that, and you're going to see some hats, some glasses. I've got those little soapstone coasters for cars and a few other things over there. And if you have some suggestions for some other products that you might like, please drop me a line, send me an email, let me know. Next week, we've got the 200th show coming up. I can't believe it's been over 4 years of interviewing grandfathers, interviewing adult grandchildren, as well as interviewing experts like Patrick about topics and products that I feel are important for grandfathers and grandparents. So this is going to be a fun episode. Without further ado, let's jump into this conversation with Patrick. Patrick, welcome to the Cool Grandpa Podcast. I'm excited to have you on and learn about Heritage HQ.
Thank you, Greg. Yes, happy to be here. I'm excited to be on the program.
Well, this is an interesting product, and I love the fact that we're going to dive into the features and we're going to dive into this. But what I'd love for you to do is help us get to understand you a little bit more and help understand the backstory of starting Heritage HQ. So if you don't mind, please introduce yourself and help us get to know you a little bit better.
Awesome. Okay, great. Well, my name is Patrick Brady, and I have, I think every company or every organization or service has a backstory. And so my backstory here to start and found Heritage HQ really began with my family. I grew up in Houston area and had a great family. Eventually, I graduated from college and I went over to China and worked there as a teacher and doing some production type things. So somewhere along the way, when I came back to the States, I met a great girl and I married her. Unfortunately, my mother passed away around that time. So I married into two amazing stepchildren and an amazing wife. And later down the road, we have a little girl. So she's 3 years old right now. And so unfortunately, it kind of pains me that my mom never really had a chance to meet my daughter. So I wanted to collect stories, and along the way, I've had a grandmother and aunts who always intended to get their stories and put them into some kind of a time capsule. Um, Never did it, regretted it a little bit. And so I wanted to record stories about my mom to save for my daughter and our family and future generations. So um, I went on a quest to create a website, a digital platform from which to kind of preserve all of those things for, my daughter and future generations. So I wanted to build my own family website. I really had a struggle to find anything out there in the market. And so I created Heritage HQ to provide that service for myself and others.
Oh, that's awesome. And what I'd love
Yep.
to do is talk a little bit about that collection of those family stories and what was driving you to do that. Because I think a lot of us have that urge to or that want to do that, but few of us actually
Yeah.
sit down and write the family history book or do the photo albums or do some of that record keeping. So I'd love to hear a little bit more about kind of that process, and then also, were there other people in your network that were also kind of doing the same thing or looking to do the same thing?
I didn't really find anybody looking to do the same thing. It's something that I just kind of wanted to do. I think every family, many families have kind of a family historian. And certainly with your audience here, genealogy and research, that's a passion for a lot of people who are listening to your program. That's not exactly my passion, but I do have an aunt who loves to, go in and research and find the documents and preserve everything. But I really wanted to get the stories. I wanted to do interviews with my family members. I wanted to, the written word is, of course, very important. And there are some really good services out there where you can kind of write down the history and write down stories and talk about the past. But for me, this digitization platform, which is a customized family website, I wanted to do something that was digital, almost like a Facebook group, but out of Facebook, that kind of the family owns this website. I wanted to do it digitally, photos, interviews, video. I thought all that was really important, kind of in a different vein than what else was on the market. To make it very personal, very customized. One of the services I'll talk about later is we do like interviews with family members. As America, we're a very mobile society. Many times, different family members, lived in different parts of the country, and so getting together geographically sometimes can be a challenge. We want to set up something where we can do, digital interviews and plug them right into the site to enjoy now and to enjoy 2 or 3 generations later.
Oh, sure. That sounds fantastic. And especially to your point, the last I don't know, since really the 40s and 50s, people have been able to have at least like maybe little 16 millimeter, 35 millimeter cameras that were silent for the most part, but there's reels of that stuff. And then as the technology went on, you had more sound adding to it. And so everybody's doing like home movies, the big VHS camcorder recorders,
Yeah.
and digital pictures as they started to come into play. And so now there are a lot of these digital archives that families have, and so being able to put those in a
Sure.
place where you can actually see them, preserve them, put them on the latest technology is awesome. Can you talk to
Right.
me a little bit about what is Heritage HQ?
So Heritage HQ, I really felt like it was important to create a customized website for families. So that would include creating a domain, um, gregpainfamily.com, for example, and just really creating something where uh, it's it's a platform to preserve the past and talk about the stories of the past. Create something where you can cherish the present. So there are things like chat groups, uh, weekly newsletters, some things to really help people to stay engaged. And so they can upload things like Little Johnny's baseball tournament and create kind of a blog post in there. And so the weekly newsletter will kind of help everybody remember, okay, here's a link to that blog that was posted. That weekly newsletter will also include anniversaries, birthdays for those living and those to honor in the past. And so I think a lot of people really like the feature where it's kind of a reminder, this week, next week, uh, Johnny's birthday. And so I don't know about you, but it's really hard for me to kind of remember all of the dates in a calendar, especially when you have a big, wide family.
Yep.
So that's one of the features. As I mentioned, interviews are another feature. You'll be able to put up video and photos And so there's a very simple family tree. Every member will have a bio that you can kind of write in. They'll have a family history section of the website. So I want to continue to grow it out, but right now the basic functionality is to have a time capsule for your family, and because it's digital, it's a website. Future generations can also link into that website, and you can continue to build it out generation after generation that way.
Oh, very cool. And you were mentioning the newsletter. Is that something that somebody has to go in and do, or is that kind of a checkbox? Hey, enable family newsletter, and then you put in the email addresses and whoever wants to go to it, and then the system just generates that automatically each week?
It will. I think an important point, Greg. I'm glad that you reminded me. So the site is not something where it's just okay, here's access to your site. We actually have a heritage helper come along, and so really what you need to provide is link to Dropbox or Google Drive, where we do the whole thing. We put it all together. It is a WordPress website, so our person will be dedicated for our clients, our customers, the families that work with our systems. And the weekly newsletter will be automated, but it also will be um, kind of managed by your heritage helper. So there's a little bit of customization because I felt like it was important to do the customization piece.
Sure.
And I do expect that, some of our customers, some of the admin people will be a little bit older. So certainly we'll need some help on the tech side. And so we'll walk you through from point A to point Z to make sure that it's, very user friendly, and there's a human contact there to really help through the process. So
Well, and I'm glad you brought that up because I wanted to talk with you about that support and understand a little bit how does that interaction work. So if I'm signing up myself and my family for Heritage HQ, how do I get that person? How do I understand how to contact them and do that interaction with them?
right. Well, we'll have a couple of options for chat. If chat function is a preferable way to communicate, we'll have chat, and we'll also, once you establish as a new account, then you'll have email access, chat access, whether that's Skype or Slack or some form of a very comfortable way of exchange. Email may be the simplest thing, but we do have documentation, manuals, video support. We have a lot of things to establish just an understanding of how the process. And then we have our heritage helper who's always available, assigned to a customer/family to walk through the process.
Can you talk to me a little bit about what makes Heritage HQ different from some of the other genealogy sites that are out there?
Right. Well, yeah, thank you for that question. So certainly Heritage HQ was built to be a complement, a support for those things, those research, uh, platforms like Ancestry, like Family Search. So in those platforms, you go in, do a lot of research, and those are amazing tools. So a lot of the information that you gather from those sites can be also transferred into the site. So your customized family site will really be, a platform to pull in all your information. So whether that's historical information, again, current interviews, or some kind of like time capsule for messaging for the future, um, it's really kind of a complement to those services, if that makes sense.
It does. Do you guys have anything set up where you could pull information out of those systems? So if I have an account with Ancestry.com and I've
Mm-hmm.
signed up for a History HQ, is there a way that History HQ can pull whatever information on my family tree out of Ancestry and load it into History or Heritage HQ?
Yeah, sure. So there's a way to download the GEDCOM files from those platforms, from those services, and then we do have a system where you can upload and it'll attach to your family website, and we're able to preserve all the things that you've researched into the site. So
Oh, cool.
absolutely,
Cool.
yeah.
And then What has been some of the experiences with the families that have been using the site? Has it been mostly kind of the Gen X baby boomers, seniors using this, or do you also see some of the younger family members also actively using this?
Great question. When I started Heritage HQ, I thought, I wondered who's the target customer, who would get the most out of the service, who could we serve the best. And my initial thought was it would be people, like me, uh, Gen X, who they have got, older parents and they've got kids, and really trying to bridge the gap and preserve the legacies of those groups. What I'm finding is, yes, I'll call myself a tweener, right? Between the generations. The tweeners really enjoy it because they really want to preserve that legacy for their kids. So they're trying to glean as many of the stories and everything from their parents, aunts, uncles, or even grandparents, while everyone, could still recite the stories. Maybe it's recipes, maybe they're photos, to preserve for their children. I also find that, seniors really enjoy it also. So they might be the admin. They really might want to just make sure that their stories are preserved. And then, even younger generations who they have a lot of questions about what was it like 100 years ago? What was the Great Depression like? They have a lot of questions that you can read in a textbook, but, when you have your family member tell the story, it's different. So I would say all three categories um, are important, but I think especially for seniors who, you know, um, they kind of see they're in the winter season of their life, I guess I would say, or the latter seasons of their life, and they really want to make sure that the important things to them can be passed down and understood for future generations. It's their grandkids, but it's also their grandkids who really will have a lot of questions about, gosh, what was it like when the internet, was invented, or when smartphones uh, came into your life. So certainly down the road to 100 years, we don't know what's going to look like, but it's important to preserve right now.
And that brings up a good point too, as far as even the website and storage. About with a lot of seniors will start writing memoirs, and maybe those are 50 pages, maybe it's 500 pages, who knows.
Yeah.
Is there enough storage and enough space on Heritage HQ on that family website to be able to upload and keep that information?
For sure. Yep. We have a basic plan, and we have upgrades for storage space, and it's unlimited. So um, as you add video or audio or more photographs, then you can kind of get elevated services with more storage. Wanted to mention one thing. So I know that the written word is very important, um, but I wanted to take that a step further also and record voice, because I think there's a lot of power behind voice, and um, these interviews, or it doesn't have to be an interview. It could be um, someone talking into a mic and just telling their story. Or we also have the ability to take transcripts or written things and put a voice behind them. So it's digitized that way. So my family, I don't know about you, but my family has a lot of kind of uh, written interviews. My aunt, the historian, my aunt Maureen, was a court reporter. So she's done some interviews and she types furiously and everything. And so we've got those things preserved. Um, I think it's also important as a complement to do, like auditory behind the transcript to capture kind of, the voice behind the story as well.
Oh, absolutely. And I find too, when you interview people and they are talking about family stories, their own story, um, you don't always get on the transcript the emotion behind it. So when somebody's talking about
Right.
they lost a child when that child was 8 years old to, I don't know, sickness, what accident, whatever, you kind of read that and it's a little bit more factual, similar to reading like a history book. Oh, all these people died and whatever, but you don't get the voice cracking. You don't get the eyes kind of tearing up a little bit. But I think when you can capture that, and we have the technology to do it, capture that voice, capture that face, and see that, then that just adds so much more impact to that story versus somebody just reading about a tragedy that happened 80 years ago.
Great point. Absolutely. That's the idea, to capture the emotion. And what are we talking about? The things that we're discussing here and the Cool Grandpa podcast, we're talking about relationships. And there's a lot of emotions behind those relationships.
Oh,
So
for sure.
to capture that in that format is important.
For sure. And I do want to pivot a little bit and talking about the relationships and in that face to face and those connections, and talk a little bit about your experience with being in China and some of the other cultural differences that maybe you've experienced or you've seen between how multi-generational families kind of interact and how they bond, and what the, I don't know, the hierarchy is not necessarily the right word, I think, but where everybody's family status kind of lands, because it's different across cultures.
Well, you're speaking to a very Confucian point of view. You've got the teacher, the sage, and the student, the older brother, younger brother, and
Right.
then, parents and their children. So there is a very established structure to relationship in Asia and specifically in China. So it is very common so my personal story. I showed up, I was a teacher, I was a professor at a college in 2001. So long, long ago. So I had a lot of writing assignments with my students. Many of them were college freshmen, English majors. And I was shocked to hear so much appreciation for their parents. They were, um, they did not miss the fact that their parents sacrificed for them to be there. And I taught at an agricultural college. Many of these kids were first generation college students. So they venerated, their ancestors. And there's a tomb sweeping day where, most people in China, it's a national holiday. They go to the graves, they sweep out the grave sites, and they really honor, generations previous. It's very common for elderly parents to live with their, adult children. So you often have three generations in one home, very common. And they also revere, elder politicians, statesmen, teachers. There's an automatic respect that is shown to them, which I thought was unique, arriving to China. I think we've got here in the States, I think we really focus on youth. Everyone wants to be younger. That's kind of different. Where there, everyone wants to be seasoned and wise. Wisdom is something to attain to, and here, kind of youth is something that everyone strives to continue to accomplish. But I think, Chinese elder generations, you see them in the parks. They're doing Tai Chi with 20 other people in the parks. They're playing chess in the parks. Certainly, there are parts of the U.S. where, people are enjoying their lives like that. But I saw it much more in China out in the open than I see in the States. And, I don't, everyone's situation is different, but I do know that there are kind of a lot of elderly people in the United States who feel very lonely. And in China, maybe it's the collectivist point of view, but many of them group together and maybe a little more social than we are here in the States.
Oh, sure. And I think too, to your point, I some of it's cultural and then some of it's necessity. It's a little bit of a blend of some different things. But how do you find, or what was your experience with them sharing family stories and sharing their own genealogy and their family histories?
Yeah, great question. So they have, I would say, as a stranger in China, I was shocked at how many people invited me into their homes, wanted to cook for me. As a foreigner, or big nose, as they sometimes call us. Um, I speak Mandarin. I got a lot of great reception, whether the elderly or kind of like peers. And they love talking about their heritage. You can because I lived in China for 10 years, so you can pick up. Um, Most people do speak Mandarin, but it's very localized. Like the pronunciation is very localized, like it is in the U.S. Um, but you can pick up where people are from, or they're saying, "Oh yeah, I'm a Sichuan person," or "I'm from Sichuan, I'm from Beijing," and they're very proud of that fact of where they're from, and they say they have a maybe 5,000 years of history, so it's a lot of their identity is based on where they're from. And then yeah, they talk about their parents. A lot of people these days had, you know, maybe like a generation before here were farmers. Um, they had a lot of stories about farming. They asked me about farm equipment and stuff, which I have no idea. I grew up in the burbs of Houston. So they are, yeah, they're very in tune with generational lineage. A lot of that was lost during the Cultural Revolution under Mao around the 1950 or so. And so they tried to, revamp all of culture and history. But a lot of it's preserved and people are very proud of it.
Yeah, that was always a thing, and I'm very limited in my Chinese cultural history, but that movement to modernize China and get rid of the past and try to do that seems like that maybe didn't fully succeed in terms of families that made it through. They kept those stories alive, even if they weren't writing things down, but they were telling stories around the dinner table or whatnot.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think, yes, and interaction and sitting around the table, especially around Chinese New Year where everybody takes 2 weeks off. I mean, there's a lot of social engagement with families. They're very close and they keep their circles very close, very tight. So if they're family, they're very, very tight, and everyone outside the circle, um, we would think it'd be rude because they don't really, they don't think about them or whatever. But
Right.
the circle is very, very tight. And right, so they certainly during the Cultural Revolution when they tried to kind of reestablish, it's almost like a year zero.
Mm-hmm.
Um, they Things were very interesting after that point because marriages were essentially arranged, not really by the families, but by the Communist Party. Um, your work was arranged, where you lived was arranged. You would never, the government, the propaganda said you will have an iron rice bowl, which means you'll never be hungry, but you have to do what we say, essentially. So a lot of families were formed arranged that way,
Oh,
and that was probably
interesting.
2 generations ago. Yeah,
Interesting.
and then with the one child policy, that was a whole different set of circumstances. But
Right.
families couldn't be as large as they wanted to. They were really limited to one child for a while. Then two, now they have a population problem, so they're trying to encourage birth.
Sure. Sure. Um, to pivot over a little bit and get us back to kind of Heritage HQ, um, do you think that the U.S. culture is starting to pivot more and get more interested in ancestry type work and documenting family stories and capturing that?
I think so. I think we have new tools for which to do it that generations past did not have. We have Facebook groups. We have amazing tools like Ancestry.com and FamilySearch.org. Other really great tools are like Forever.com, where you can preserve. They digitize a lot of you know photos and documents and video. There are a lot of really great tools out there. Social media. I mean, a lot of people use social media as like this kind of sharing or keeping people together, keeping people close. So I think right now, and then of course the boomers, the baby boomer, the generation in terms of numbers are, we've never seen anything like it. And I do think that they're very proud of their history. They're proud of their stories. They were they were the greatest generation plus, and I think every generation kind of feels like the next one down the road. They don't understand or they want to do things their own way, so that's a threat. So, um, and gosh, you go down a couple generations, we may really honor the ones in the past. So A lot of tools. I think there's a lot of increased interest. Um, so and you obviously think so too, Greg, with your podcast and really connecting with grandpas and grandmas and everything. So I think they want to be heard. I think it's important that they're heard.
Yeah.
Um, I started Heritage HQ in a lot of ways as a bridge for legacy, maybe sometimes a reconciliation platform, maybe sometimes understanding, preservation. So there are a lot of reasons why I started it, but I hope that this can serve families to really create just this eternal platform
Yeah.
that way.
No, I love it. I've always been saying, well, not always, but since I've kind of been doing this work, is that grandfathers and grandmothers too, but grandfathers really are the holders of that family history and that family story.
Yeah.
And also, they're oftentimes the ones that at the end of a big family gathering, big meal, or something like that, they start to get into the storytelling mode. They start to tell, whether it's your adult children and you're like, hey, Robbie, remember when you were 15 and you thought you got away with this? I knew what was going on the whole time, and there's all these stories that start to leak out and come out that I think grandfathers are a little bit of the center of doing that. And this was such an interesting product that you've got, this ability to record these stories, because I remember growing up in my teenage years and 20s, I'd go to meals with my father's friends and they would be sitting there and then they would start talking about what life was like when they were going through high school in the 50s, and about going to cars, and they would, if buddy needed a new tire, they would go quietly to this other car and they would steal a tire off of this car and switch them out and put the bad tire on this guy's car. One guy had a hot rod that had an apple crate for a seat, so you had to be careful with the acceleration. Otherwise, if you stomped on the gas, that crate falls back and your feet are up in the air and you can't see what's going on. All these different stories that these guys would be talking about and just laughing at the table, and those stories are just disappearing. But with the technology we've got, you can put a cell phone out there now and record and then upload that to Heritage HQ, it sounds like.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Is there anything, before we wrap stuff up, can you walk me through the process of somebody that starts to go through that engagement with Heritage HQ? They find you on the web, they get to the website, they're interested. Walk me through that process of how they can explore and set up an account and get started with you guys.
Sure. Well, you can always contact me directly, Patrick at heritagehq.co. So the first step would be to, choose a package, choose one of the plans. A basic plan is really basic. We help you with hosting, and we help you create a domain that's specific to you and your family. And then we kind of walk you through the process from A to Z. You'll have a heritage helper assigned to your account. And so file sharing we try to make it as simple as possible, usually through a Dropbox or Google Drive. All you have to do is provide the link. We'll go in, and everything we do is very secure. We've got on the website, we do talk about security. Understand that's an integral part of you being willing to share. So we do the work, but everything is very secure. All of your information is yours. And then so we start the process, create a domain, start to upload photos and videos. We do like a written history in there. We start to build out the family tree. And then there are add-on things like we talked about, like interviewing, um, chat function within the website. So we kind of walk you through, and then we also have some like a coaching of how to um, communicate with your family members as you're approaching them to share their information. And so we have a walkthrough from A to Z, and that's how you get started. But you can contact me at patrick@heritagehq.co at the beginning, or you can go to our website, heritagehq.co, and look at the plans and see what we can do to customize your experience.
Oh, that's awesome. And I'll be sure to put links and put the email address into the show notes. So folks out walking dogs and working in the garden or whatnot, they can just go to the website and check that out and find you pretty quick. The
Great.
other thing I was curious about, and I ask people that when they have different products and they have different services going on, is do you have a roadmap of future features that you want to discuss or share with us?
So we talked about the weekly newsletter. That'll be something that can be very simple, but it can also, for an upgrade, we can do something very customized. We can do like logo bannering or something for your family. We can add some photos. We can kind of make that a little bit richer than just text. I want to create apps for families. So based on the website, if it's, gregpaynefamily.com, we'd also create an app for your iPhone or Android. And chat function and engagement is an important piece of what Heritage HQ is. So there'll be notifications, photo sharing, and things like that within the app. So that's next, a couple steps later, but it's something I think is important. Really, the platform here is kind of an alternative to a Facebook group.
Sure.
And so we want engagement. We want, not just capturing history, but also using it as a tool for members of the family to interact. I think that's a very important part of it. So those are major things that we're trying to accomplish. Also, I guess one last thing is we want to help you create digitization of files and photos. So once we do that, we send them back, and then we'll just automatically up those right into your site.
Oh, that's awesome. That's great.
Yeah.
And I love the idea of the app because my mind's already going with when my son and his family are at the beach or taking a vacation, they've got a bunch of photos on their phone or whatever. They could possibly use that app just to go ahead and start uploading from the phone or being able to have that. Because when you get home from vacation, you're not thinking about it. You're thinking about going back to work the next day. You'll get to it, and then it never happens.
Right.
But, when you're on a drive back from Asheville, North Carolina, and you're in the car for a few hours, it's like, yeah, it's easy enough for somebody to go on there and just go ahead and upload.
Absolutely. Yep. Right from your photo cache, upload it. I think in the future also we'll connect to social media, and you'll have the option to shoot it right into the website. The other thing I would say about Facebook groups, and I think a lot of families do use Facebook groups to announce reunions or talk about birthdays, or they find some new documentation on Ancestry.com or something. Facebook groups are awesome, great. Although I think people are beginning to become tired of just ad pop-ups, and the idea here is to really keep things private within your circle. And you can invite people in, but outsiders aren't going to be knocking on the door to get in, if you know what I mean. It's completely encapsulated to custom however you want it. So.
Well, and the other drawback too, when you talk about Facebook or Instagram or whatever it is, different generations are using different apps. And so just because the old fogies are on Facebook, that doesn't mean that's where the 13-year-olds are hanging out anymore. And then trying to make them use something that they don't naturally use becomes a bit of a challenge.
Right. Yeah. Boomers are probably not going to start using Snapchat.
No.
And my 3-year-old definitely is not going to be using Facebook. So where's the interaction there?
Yeah. And this becomes, like you said, it's like, hey, everybody in the family, just go ahead and load this thing on your phone, and then it's there. And then everybody knows that it's essentially family business, whether it's silly business or whether it's serious business. It's just family.
Right. Exactly. Great point.
So, Patrick, I've had you on for a little bit. Is there anything about Heritage HQ or anything about like family stories or family histories that I haven't asked you that you would like to talk about?
I just want to convey that we want to serve. Service is where is our first thing in mind. We want to honor generations in the past and enjoy and be enriched by the generations currently that are alive. And then we want to educate future generations. So we just really seek to serve families. I mean, myself and my team, we just want to serve families to create something special for, forever, that'll live forever. So that's our heart, and that's our desire. That's our drive. And for those who are interested, who really want to preserve their family stories and history, please contact me. We'd love to do it.
And again, I'll put the links to your email as well as Heritage HQ into the show notes, so people can find that pretty easy. Patrick, thank you so much for being on the Cool Grandpa podcast. This sounds like a really interesting product and sounds like something that can really help bring families together. So I appreciate your time on sitting down with me and telling me a little bit more about this.
Thank you for the opportunity, Greg. This is a real honor, and appreciate it. Thank you.
I really enjoyed having Patrick on. It was great hearing about Heritage HQ. What I really enjoyed listening to as well was his stories of being over as a professor in China and his experience with going over to some of the students' homes, learning more about their family stories and their ancestors, and how that whole culture really comes together and everything is very laid out, and how integrated they all are. It's a fantastic story, and I loved listening to it. Remember, next week is going to be our 200th show, so this is going to be a really fun program. And also remember to go over to the cool-grandpa.us website, check out the bookstore, look over those products. And until next time, remember to stay cool.